My coaching career began back in 2003. Because I wasn't a great player of this game, I've always had a patience and a tolerance of lads who perhaps can't go and understand something straight away. Something I've seen a lot of in rugby league is some of these lads who have come through in the game have not necessarily got the same educational advantages as a lot of the players in rugby union perhaps have. And I think one thing I've always tried to do in my own coaching career is look after the person. Because you look after the person, you look after the player.
A massive thank you to our sponsor NTS, Nuclear Transport Solutions, who are the leading global provider of safe, secure and reliable nuclear transport solutions. We are very grateful for NTS sponsoring this episode of Tackling It Together. Welcome back to the Tackling It Together podcast brought to you by Little Blackbird, and today we are at Siddle Amateur Rugby League Club with the legend that is Chris Rose, aka Rosie, who I know from the back end of my playing days when Rosie went to the dark side from rugby league over to rugby union. I had the pleasure of being coached by you for a short period of time, but some of my pals have been coached by you by a number of seasons. So I wanted to get you on the pod. How's it going? Pretty good, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to have broken up from school for the summer, and yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Before we roll in, I'd like to ask a little question just to kind of ease you into it. So here we go. I'll go with this. In an altercation, in a fight, who would win between a capybara, which is one of those big, furry rat things that you'd see in a zoo, and a mountain goat? Well, I think your mountain goat's going to win that just out of absolute resilience and doggedness. I think your capybara would probably be your bookie's favourite. But your mountain goat, you look at what they go through, what they have to do to feed, to breed. So I think your mountain goat's persistence is going to see it through against the natural physical attributes of the capybara. But I could be wrong. So you put your money on the mountain goat? I'm going with the mountain goat, yeah, I am, yeah. I knew we'd get a dead serious, in-depth description. Rosie, it's a pleasure to have you on, pal. I haven't seen you in a while. Well, I say you come back to the Chester past players lunch every January, you and Will Bown get a room, and you make an effort to come back to that every kind of year. So it's only been a few months since I've seen you, but I want to talk about your perspective as a coach, but also we're going to get into the rugby league culture, and we're going to dive into that mental health stuff. One thing I always ask, because I just put these offers out there, but when I dropped you a WhatsApp, you came back pretty quick and you said yes. So why did you say yes? I think it's important to talk about these things. I think above all, I wanted to come and do this with you. We go back a long time, and you've always come across to me always somebody who's warm and engaging and one of those Chester old boys. And then the opportunity to talk about my own career in rugby, the things I've learnt across the last 25 years of doing this in both rugby league and rugby union and in education. And what I've learned, obviously, not only about coaching the game, but about people and about what I've accumulated across these multiple careers and positions that I've been in. So I've been looking forward to it. Give us a little bit of a pass into your coaching play. I imagine this is where it all started for you as a young lad. You're a Halifax lad. I am. Halifax, my hometown. I still love Halifax Rugby League. My coaching career began back in 2003. I was teaching PE at North Halifax Grammar School, and a couple of lads came up to me, a lad called Tom Powell and a lad called James Atkinson, and asked me if they could have a rugby league team. And I'd always watched rugby league here and at Halifax, and so I set about educating myself as a coach, and the first club team that I coached was here at Siddle, and I learnt a tremendous amount. I wasn't that much older than my players at the time. I had the under-17 team here and took them through into under-18s, and we had a lot of success. We ended up winning the National Youth League, which was a big competition at under-18 level that the club had reached the final of the previous year. And I was fortunate enough to have a brilliant group of players who I was able to coach here, and that really catapulted me onto what I've done since in the game, where I went from Halifax to coaching Salford. I went to Salford
doing their scholarship and their academy. I then spent 3 years at Leeds Rhinos doing the under-18s there. And at the same time then I was England under-16 coach for 4 years. After Leeds, I went to Warrington and then into rugby union with Chester, where obviously we met. And then I came back to rugby league's assistant coach of Halifax, and then now with Sheffield Eagles in the championship. So that's a pretty brief journey through my last 20 years.
And we also have a connection, as in you spent a lot of time in West Cumbria, playing rugby as a kid, coaching probably, so you know a lot about the Cumbrian culture. There's a lot of links between the Cumbrian culture and the Yorkshire culture and rugby league. And I think I'd heard you on a podcast, or whether it was in a voice note back and forward, and you said, you know, the rugby league beast is very different to the rugby union lads, you know, whether we like it or not. And I want to get into that into a little bit more detail. Just try and unpick that and tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
So I've always worked in both games alongside, because in the daytime, I'm a director of rugby at an independent school in Doncaster. And having coached in both, rugby union lads, by and large, it's not an absolute, but by and large, come from affluent backgrounds. The majority of those, certainly those who kick on and play international rugby, are almost to a man privately educated, and they come from affluent families where dads tend to own company owners and those kind of things. So they've got a very, and you can't completely generalise, but as a whole, the rugby union lads tend to come from very comfortable. Not in all towns. So what I think that with those private educations, and most of your lads are playing in the top level at rugby union will have lists of GCSEs and A levels and degrees, and so they're perhaps from a far more comfortable existence as a whole than your typical rugby league lad. And rugby league lads do tend to come from to be educated in the state sector, and tend to go down the line of having more manual working positions and those kind of jobs. Now, one is not better or worse than the other. It absolutely isn't.
No.
But there is a distinct cultural difference between the two, and that dates back, of course, to going back to the split of 1895, and something that I've written about and spoken about before, the socio-histories of the two games. We continue to have the effects of that now. You go back to the very reason why the game parted in 1895. The rugby was played as one single game. The northern teams were enjoying a lot of success in winning things. And this did not go down well at all with the southern-based RFU. The northern teams doing well because these were manual workers. They were strong, they were coal miners, they were steel workers. And there needed to be, and this didn't fit well with the establishment. Now, what happened then, of course, was that the southern-based RFU decided that the northern teams, they accused them of professionalism. And the reason why they did that was because northern lads could not afford Saturday afternoon off work to play rugby. So the teams, which were generally from places of employment or from churches, those that came out of employment, out of the factories, would pay their workers the amount of money they would get for being at work for playing rugby on a Saturday. This was known as broken time payments. Right. And this provided the RFU with the excuse, the reason that they needed to accuse the northern clubs of professionalism. Hence, August 22nd, 1895, we get a split, and we get the Rugby Football Union going one way, and we get the Northern Union going the other way.
Right on.
And then in 1922, the Northern Union becomes the Rugby Football League. So you've got that split, that cultural split that happened then. We still see that now. Now, the games have come, certainly in recent years, have come closer together, and we see far more mixing between the two. And so you get this transition, you get this movement of coaches, as I've done myself, between the two codes, but that's the history of the difference between them.
And let's stay with that, because I wanted to get into the cultural side. And I remember on a podcast I heard from you a couple of months ago, you were talking about a journal that you did at uni, the commodification of fandom. So when we talk about come 96, when Super League was kind of set up, they wanted to kind of bring these franchises. Let's make Cumbrian teams. Let's put Salford and things to Castleford, and let's create a Manchester.
Yes.
Which didn't go down too well.
No, it didn't. What they wanted to do prior to the Super League in 1996 was they wanted American-style franchise teams. So they've looked to impose the American sports model on the game of rugby league. So they looked at the sport, and these external people looking at it have gone, right, well, there's no point having a team in Barrow and Whitehaven and Workington. So let's merge them and let's become Cumbria, because geographically that makes sense to have one team there rather than three. Let's have a look over here. Well, we've got Oldham and we've got Salford. Well, there's no point in doing that. Let's make Manchester, and they can be a team. And let's go into it. Let's not have Halifax having a team and Bradford having a team. Let's put them together. Castleford, Featherstone, Wakefield, same thing. They were going to call them Calder, which made no sense at all because the River Air's their river, but regardless. But what that did is it ignored the history, the traditions and the attachments that we have in rugby league, and the fans' attachment to their clubs, and the idea of merging. And we joked about it, the West Cumbrian one, where somebody said at the time, looking to merge Working and Whitehaven, you might as well merge Israel and Palestine, because that's the scale of the tribalism and the rivalry between them.
Yeah.
And that's why those mergers did not happen. It's why they didn't come in, because of the strength of fans' attachments and the strength of resistance towards those mergers.
Yeah. It's interesting that I was sharing a story with you. So I've obviously played rugby union, but I was fully involved in rugby league. I remember watching Martin Afire, Wigan play 96 and running on the pitch afterwards. And I was brought up in the rugby and the football side. So my dad ran the bar at Workington Reds, right over the road. So you've literally got Borough Park there, a road. You've got Town Ground. For many a year, decades, council were trying to create one grandstand, function room, the whole lot, speedway, would house everyone, made perfect sense. My dad said he would disengage from the club the day that happened, and that was everyone around the club. And I think Working Town was pretty similar.
Yeah.
It was just a couple of councillors who, my dad probably said they were on the fiddle, but actually, looking back, they were probably forward thinking. Now, I've spoke to you before about this, and I think there's a real link. Now, as an adult, me at 41 years of age, I make a lot of connections between that and mindset. The ability to think, are we being quite fixed, narrow-minded in our approach, or are we able to take the blinkers off and think, where's the potential opportunities here? Yes, it's a risk, but where's the gambles? What impact has that potentially fixed mindset had on players in rugby league in terms of their mental health, well-being? Is there any correlation?
I think something I've seen a lot of in rugby league is some of these lads who have come through in the game, like I said earlier, have not necessarily got the same educational advantages as a lot of the players in rugby union perhaps have. And a lot of the lads who come through in rugby league, and I've seen it before, where they become almost idolised, they become almost celebrities within their own community. Now, it's great when they go on and have a full-time career in the sport, and you look around this room here at Siddle, where the club has got this proud record of producing players who've gone on to become professional players in the Championship, in Super League, and at international level. And you've got many from this club in the NRL and beyond that at the very, very top of the game. But you've also got those who begin that journey but don't necessarily then make it to that level. And I think sometimes when that, it's not to say that that's all that a player has had, but when it's been such a significant part of their life, and then on a coach's decision that can be cut short, that can be a huge thing to be taken away from a young player. And as I said, this is not like in rugby union where, as we've talked about, these lads have been to private school and university. The void can be, the space that is taken away, can be far bigger for lads who who come out of more normal working class communities.
And do you think, so I make big connections between obviously rugby, but lack of industry back home. You know, obviously steelworks was a big thing back home for us. I remember playing and my coaches would come with their overalls and have a shower before the bloody went on the paddock. But obviously that was taken away, and I don't know what it was around in Yorkshire, mining or whatever it might be, but do you think there's some links between that lack of industry and, you know, industry played a big part in that transition into rugby, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. The very foundation of rugby clubs was, as I've said earlier on, was very often the workplace. Now, this area, Halifax, this is a textile town, so that's the history of this town. So we didn't perhaps have the heavy industry of the steel and the coal, but yeah, industry was very much provided very much of the foundation of rugby league clubs. And I think, as we know in the north in the last 40 to 50 years, particularly as you move over into areas like over in Castleford and Pontefract and into South Yorkshire, the decline of heavy industry brought with it a huge number of problems with not only with employment, which of course almost overnight. You know, I remember my family from Barnsley, and I remember back to the miners' strikes, and almost overnight people went from everybody in the village, say Grimethorpe and areas like that, and of course it infected the Wakefield district too and so many other districts. People went from 100% employment in areas to nothing almost overnight. And of course, had a huge impact on areas, and there's been some degree of recovery. You've got the service sector industries and things like that, and factories springing up in these areas, but that has taken 40 plus years to happen, and I think that destruction of communities, which did happen in the 1980s, undoubtedly had a huge effect on young men. Really did. People as well, growing up seeing their fathers and their relatives not having employment, without doubt, had a real serious impact.
And that's interesting, that, isn't it? Because it's the modelling, it's the impact that it creates. So kids will be looking at those dads who were having to navigate those tough times. And I mentioned that to you before. I still work back home. I was back at my old high school 2 weeks ago doing some work on resilience and mental health. And, you know, West Cumbria in particular is struggling in terms of suicide rates, mental health decline, particularly in kids. You're talking kids from secondary 11 to 16. And I make some real links between those kids who are in those early teens. They're probably having parents who are my age, in their 30s, 40s, going into 50s. 40s to 50s is a hotspot in terms of suicide. So it's interesting when you talk there about, it's not just the impact it has on them, but the modelling, the behaviour that it's modelling to other people, to young people coming through and figuring that out. What's rugby league doing? Well, because I think rugby league is probably doing well in terms of these local areas. So what is it that rugby's doing really well to help lads become better versions of themselves, improve mental health and well-being? What's rugby league nailing?
This club here has gone from strength to strength. I first coached at Siddle back in 2005, so 20 years ago, and the growth of the club has been incredible. And we went from, when I first was coaching here, we were based at the old clubhouse, which was up the road, which was basically a house. And it had a cellar, and you'd go into the cellar to get changed, and then the players would come up the path and walk down the road to play down on these pitches here. And this club has been incredibly well managed. And I think, as you see this morning when you come in here, the reason it is successful is people. Siddle is a unique place. It really is. It's not a big place. It's about it's about half a mile away from Halifax. I was born about a couple of 100 metres up the road from here, and Siddle has long had this incredible sense of community, and the growth. The men's first team is at the very top of the amateur game, but they've got age group teams down as young as 4 and 5 year olds playing the game. And this club is very much the heart of this community in this area. And strength develops strength. And so the lads now who are the coaches of the senior men's teams at this club, they were my players 20 years ago here, and their kids are now into the junior ranks. And so it's very much a part of people's lives. It's very much part of what people do here.
Yeah.
It's about people more than anything else. It is about people. And I found when I came here that, the number of people who are willing to help, to get around you, to help with the washing of your kit, the coaching of your team, running your water bottles, there is a real firm sense of that here. And that's and looking after each other. And many of my best friends come from my time, the experiences that I had at this club and out on those pitches out there.
That's the beauty of clubs, in that you've got your role models here every Saturday. You get young kids standing on the sideline, looking directly. They're the people that I want to be.
Yes.
Not just on the pitch, but in here, how they carry themselves. And we also know the harsh reality is there's a flip side to that, isn't there? And there's no, there's nothing to say that it in terms of mental health decline, it's worse in rugby league as it is to rugby union. But there is high-profile cases. Terry Newton, for example, who sadly lost a legend of the game. I'm going to get a couple of names here. I know as a club you lost a chap called Mick Shaw and Matthew Smith to suicide. Where's the areas for development? What could rugby league be doing from grassroots to professional level? What could we be better at?
I think rugby league does a very good job, and a friend of mine, Keith Senior, who I coach with at Sheffield Eagles, he works for Rugby League Cares, and rugby league has been quite at the forefront of identifying and helping and contributing to improving the situation for mental health. Another very well-known person from the game is Luke Ambler. Yeah. Luke's a friend of mine. He's from this town too, and Luke was very much a pioneer. We're going back to sort of 2000 and 2014 now, and setting up his Andy's Man clubs, which our Mark, my brother, is a patron of, and so I think we've been very, very good at it, and very much at the forefront of identifying problems and looking to help people, and that's something that I do think we do very well. You can always do more. Yeah. You can always do more, of course you can, but I think that the things that have come into play in the last 15 years plus from rugby league have been exceptional. Going through one or two things myself, one of the people I go back to and talk to is a guy called Steve Greenwood, who played for this club, was a bit of a sort of legend. He won national titles at this club as a player, and he was my assistant coach here, and he's somebody that, irrespective of how long ago it was when we coached a team here, I know I can get on to Stevie and have that chat with him, and that's because of our shared experiences in this sport at this club.
Mm-hmm. As you're young and you're growing up, you see the exterior of rugby league, don't you? The strength, the ability to hit a line, to make a tackle, but what I'm seeing now through Andy's Man Club, through what Keith Senior's doing, we're actually looking from the inside out to say it's all right to just look within, explore those feelings and bring it out. We're in control as to who we share that with.
Yeah.
We might not stand up on a table and share it with the entire world. It's not about that, but it might be picking those people, that chap you mentioned there, to say, I can drop my mask and open up with that person because I know there's going to be no judgment. It's a transaction. I'm going to get something from that person. And I think that's what's really good. And I think rugby league's a bit of a pioneer in that we're starting to flip it from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. And for me, that's what I'm saying. That's probably why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Getting young lads in particular, but also all the lads that we've had habitual decades of not talking about this stuff and maybe using alcohol as a bit of a mask to mask all that stuff. Now we're saying we've got a bit of permission to convert that.
There's a huge bit that Luke, I remember saying once to me when going through a marriage breakup, and Luke said to me about, he goes, go on my Instagram now, and he's really good speaker, Luke. Go on my Instagram now. Look at them pictures. That's me and my family, isn't it? He went, Rosie, what were happening 10 seconds before that picture? They're all fighting, aren't they? So look at this picture here that looks perfect. Look at everybody's pictures on Instagram, on Facebook, showing that image that they want everybody to see. And we get that thrust upon us because we go through Instagram and you start thinking, my life don't look like that. Why is everybody else having this? But the truth is they're not. I always go back to what Luke said to me there, which is people will present the life that they want you to think they're having rather than the one that they necessarily are. And I think that's a big thing. And I think that can really hit people mentally, that when thinking, why is everybody else's lives better than mine? But that's not necessarily the case.
No, and that's searching for perfection, whereas we know what is perfection? It's hard to get there. It's the journey. And you mentioned there a few things. So what you're talking about there is resilience. You know, those moments you mentioned there with marriage breakups or challenging moments, they're moments of resilience. What for you as a coach, before we get into you as a coach, I want to spend a bit of time talking about you as a coach. What have been the real pivotal moments of you getting to where you are now? What are the key moments for you in your life that's got you to where you are now?
I think I had a real determination to prove people wrong. I don't have a glittering playing career behind me. I don't. The pinnacle of my playing career was turning out for Siddle's second team. And the reason why I played for Siddle's second team was I wasn't picked for the thirds that day. So I played for the twos on this pitch out here in the Pennine Premier League for Siddle against Elland, going back to probably 2006. So I didn't have that playing career behind me. My way as a coach came through being a teacher and having to educate myself. So and along the way I had to constantly prove myself because I didn't have the playing career. Now this is where you get a big difference in union and league. In rugby union, the teacher coach is quite common. You know, Clive Woodward, for example, was a PE teacher who became a coach. Yeah. That is far less the case in rugby league. Knowledge is your biggest thing. So I had to make sure that I was incredibly well versed and knew my coaching inside out. I've always planned to the finest detail. If it meant being in Wigan at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, well, I'd be there if I felt that I could learn something that would improve me. And I think I had to take. The game has given me such a tremendous amount. And I think that, but there were difficult bits too, where again, being overlooked for certain coaching positions because I didn't have that playing background, but then having to prove by the success of my teams that actually what I can offer as a coach will give your players what they need, and that's what I've always done. So I've always made sure that I've had that continual striving to keep learning, to keep bettering myself, which I do now, in order to provide that to my players.
It's interesting because we're going to get onto that, but when you talk about challenges, how do you find it when you see different methodologies from coaches that totally contradict your style?
Yeah, I think I did see something yesterday, which, ironically enough, with us doing this today, was the most heartbreaking experience I've ever seen in my coaching and teaching career. And it involved my daughter. She's year 4, she's 9 years old. And the coach had decided that what she was going to do was select an elite group and a group that was not selected for that group. And the way she did it was to put the list of selected players on a clipboard in one corner of the room and a list of the non-selected players in the other corner. And I saw my daughter go over and see the girls who were celebrating their selection. And then I saw her walk across the room and see her name on the list that hadn't been selected.
Yeah.
And it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen, to think. And she were doing her best to be as brave as she could, and I just wanted to get her out of that situation and just tell her that I loved her and that she were all right and that we'd find a way through it. And I think one thing I've always tried to do in my own coaching career is look after the person, because you look after the person, you look after the player. Yeah. And I hope that I've never done something like that to hurt somebody in that way. I'm not saying I've always made every decision. You make mistakes as a coach, you do, but I think for somebody so young to go through what I saw yesterday was traumatic. It really was. I think because I wasn't a great player of this game, I've always had an understanding of lads who perhaps, I've always had a patience and a tolerance of lads who perhaps can't go and understand something straight away and can't, because I couldn't myself. So I will take that time as a coach to teach the individual the things that they need to do, rather than just having an expectation of it, as somebody who might have played at the top might do. So I think I've always had a greater empathy for the player who needs a little bit more time and a little bit more instruction to understand something, because of my own, I've often said before, my own inadequacies as a player have made me the better coach. And that's something that I've always done. I'll take the time to teach the player something that they haven't understood or that they can't get at the first go, because that was me as an individual.
Yeah. So imagine a few years hanging your coaching hat on a peg. You're having a do in here. What were the things you would want to be hearing from people at the bar if they were to mention 2 or 3 things about your coaching philosophy? What would you want to hear?
I'd want people to say that I cared about my players. I couldn't have ever given more to the coaching jobs that I've done. That's what I'd say. The effort that went into it. I remember when I was coaching here and going up to Sainsbury's on a Sunday morning to buy bananas and Lucozade and Haribo's to give to the players, because I was so intent on them being successful. I would hope people would also say that I had a really good knowledge as a coach, and that I provided well-coached, well-structured sessions. I've never ever turned up to a session and just done it off the cuff. It's always been very well planned and very well detailed.
I got in touch with half a dozen lads. Everyone came back to me.
Are you kidding?
I got in touch with them last night. Some of them were hard work. One of them this morning. So just hold on to what you said there, and I'm going to feed this back to you, and let's just reflect on it. So these are lads that you coached at Chester for a number of years. I'm no Shakespeare, so I'll try and roll this off the best we can. Rosie brought incredible energy and enthusiasm to every session he ran. His meticulous approach to coaching meant he explained each skill clearly and really drilled into us, making sure we understood why it was important. I've been lucky enough to be coached by some of the best in the game, and I honestly believe Rosie is right up there as a skills coach. He's the kind of coach who makes the difficult simple. He's always willing to push you to get the best out of yourself. His care for us as players and his passion for the game shone through with everything that he did. He's not just a brilliant coach, but a great guy too. Key quotes that we heard a number of times. He made the difficult simple, explaining what he wanted and why it benefited all of us. He's the best coach I've ever worked with, an outstanding bloke who cared so much about all of us. If I had to pick one coach again, it would be Rosie. How does that land?
Well, it feels good. That it really does to hear those comments. It feels amazing to think that, because you go to a place and you do a job as best you can, the way you can, but you don't necessarily think that people think those things. So that's that means a lot. I appreciate that. Yeah.
And I wanted to tell you that, not to blow smoke up your ass, but I know you're involved in different levels. I know it hasn't been easy at Sheffield over the years, and I know you don't always get that, and you don't always get that honest stuff from fellas. I didn't have that experience because I'd gone out the fire door when you came to the club, but I always know, and it's interesting. One lad said, "Why do you think everyone still calls him coach?" And I couldn't read out some of the things. There's some absolute. I'm going to send you all the feedback. I'm going to collate it all verbatim, and I'll send it all to you. Because Andy Moore said some belters, but it wouldn't have gone down well on here. But you'll make perfect sense of it. But why is it important for you at this stage of your career to hear that?
I think we don't necessarily take the time in our coaching careers to ever stop and really reflect on things that we've done in the past. I think you move from one coaching position, you go to your next one, and you don't necessarily think about the impact that you might have had in places. But I think that's why it's important to go back and reconnect with those players that and teams that you've coached in the past. That's why I always make an effort in January to come to past players.
Yeah.
And we have a get together here every year in December, which we've done for years and years of the 2008 national under-18 champions getting together and having a night out in Halifax, and it can be very easy not to, and because people's lives are busy, people have lots of things on. But I think something I've learned is when there's an opportunity to get back together with people, go back and do it. Go back and because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen in your own life, in other people's lives. So do take the time to reflect and to go back and reminisce about your shared experiences, and that's important. And that was really encouraging to hear that.
So what advice would you give young kids, either within education or young kids coming through the sport of rugby league? How do they build resilience? How do they add to their resilience toolkit throughout life?
That's a huge question, and I think it's something that it is being talked about more than it probably ever has been. And I think me and Luke Campbell were talking this morning about this, and it's about your kids can't always have everything the way they want it. That's it, and responding to things that are going to go wrong and going through these. But I think in terms of how we do it, we've got to tell kids that it's all right to get things wrong. It is. It's okay to get things wrong, so long as you're doing your level best in whatever it is. That's an important bit, because not everyone's going to be gifted in the classroom. Just as I was never gifted out on the field out there. I was great in school. I was a bright lad who had a lot of backing educationally through my mum in particular, who was a primary school teacher. But I wasn't a great sportsman, and I had to deal with those bits of not being picked and not being the best in the year. But I think going through those taught me along the way, gave me the resilience and the toughness that I've needed in the coaching career. I think we've got to get people speaking. We have to do that. And in education, as a teacher, we teach kids geography, we teach kids maths, we teach them science. But how often do they actually get to speak about themselves and what's going on with them? Probably not often enough. It's not an allocated part of your day. But I always try and make sure that I allow a period of time after a training session where my players can come and talk to me about anything that it might be. And that's another really important bit for me, where pay attention to your kids. Ask them how they're getting on in the different subjects. Ask them how they're doing in the tests. Ask them about their relationship with the teachers. Because finding that information out about them and talking to them about it then buys you something on the field where you need them to give that extra little bit. They'll give it to you if you're taking a genuine interest in them.
I think that's a really good point about making kids feel visible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Make them feel visible in whatever they do. And I say that my kids, my little lass, she's 7, little lad's 5, and similar to me, academically, you maybe don't fit in that environment, but it's like, find your thing that you're good at, find your unique thing. Everyone's got it. Once you've got it, you'll be able to earn money at it, you'll be able to find a way, but just commit to it. And you nailed it there, as in just give everything your best, because the fear is that people, when it gets tough, I'll sack it off.
Yeah, that's it.
Somewhere else.
That's it. And I think sometimes as well now, and we've got to be aware of this, that mental health is a reality. It is, but we've also got to teach resilience alongside it. I sometimes think in school where you go, kids, anxiety about exams. Yes, but as my mum said to me, Chris, you're not the first to take exams, and you won't be the last. So we're doing it. We need the two need to exist alongside each other. It's acknowledging that this exists and there is genuine anxiety and but let's also build this resilience alongside it. I think two things that are probably bits of advice that I've heard over the years was a coach of mine. I used to be involved in Thai boxing in this town, and I remember one of my coaches saying to me, Rosa, everyone's got a sign above their head that says "Notice me," and I thought, that's a really good point. Notice me. And the other one is when talking to young people, interesting is good, interested is better. And what that means is, take that in. It's all well and good if you're telling them something about you that might be interesting. However, interested in them, that's better. Yeah. So that's something that I think is important.
And that makes sense when you look at those comments. So what people have said about you and your coaching career. Jackie off camera has just informed me that there was an incident here in 2006, and it was the Siddle Stars in Their
That's
Eyes
right.
competition, and we've got a winner, I believe. Tell me about that.
That's right, Siddle Stars in Their Eyes, 2006. It was at the Weavers, it was at the Shea in Halifax. And I were up against some stiff competition. There were a player out of this club called Greg Robinson who'd gone on before me with his wife, and they'd done a pretty impressive rendition from Greece. And it were good. And I went on, I thought, I've been working really hard on it, on my Tony Adler. And I've been reading up on tips for singing. And it said, oh, make sure when you're singing you don't have any alcohol. So I've been doing vocal exercises throughout the day. And thankfully I nailed it that night. And I won £100, which in 2006, that's worth about $1 million now, isn't it? Yeah. So then me and my team went into Halifax after that, with me as the Siddle's reigning, Stars in Their Eyes champion. It was a great night.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. And the final thing I ask all the guests on this is for your little blackbird worm of wisdom. Now, take that how you will. But what would your little worm of wisdom be, Rosie boy?
I'd probably say to myself, be serious, but not too serious. That might be a point that I would make. I think I've always believed in doing the very best job possible, whether as a teacher or coach, but I can be guilty of viewing everything as a campaign and never stopping to enjoy the ride. And this is something that I said to my own daughter last night. I went, hey, you've had a tough day today, a really tough day. But don't forget to enjoy the experience, and whether you're picked or not picked, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days, but enjoy the ride and always appreciate people. If I think back in my coaching career to people who I think the highest of, who've worked with me, it's all been about the way they've made me feel. And I've worked with some great coaches across the game. And I think back to those who I think the highest of, a guy called Francis Cummins, who made me feel good about me. And because of that, I'd do anything for him. He could correct me, he could tell me when I got something wrong, but somebody who had a genuine interest in me from the beginning and has always supported me. And always look after people is something that I would say to my younger self, keep doing it.
Rosie, it's been an absolute pleasure, pal. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, yeah.
Should go and get a couple of tackle bags and knock 10 bells out of each other on the paddock. Cheers, mate. Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching the podcast. Please take a couple of seconds to engage with us. Please subscribe, like, or give us a comment on how you're finding the podcast so far. And keep listening. Take care. All the best. Keep smiling.